I am so pleased to have Jeff Bernstein, president at A3, join me for our annual check-in and certainly to get a pulse on current robotics and automation trends, industry shifts and constraints. Welcome, Jeff. It's so good to see you again.
Great to see you as well. Happy to have this discussion with you.
I want to dive right into the numbers. So tell me a little bit about what A3's latest order volume data reveal about North American robotics trends in the early part of 2026, particularly after the modest increases that we saw post 2023, those declines and so what are the opportunities here in warehousing and logistics contract in construction? You drive the conversation.
Okay. All right. Well, as you know, 2025 ended up in North America up about, I think, 6.5%. The first quarter is a little slower than that. Units were up slightly. Revenue was down 5 or 6%. The exact numbers will be published soon. Um, again, I don't get too bogged down in the quarterly data. I look at the long-term opportunities here in robotics, and I don't think they've ever been brighter. I think at some point soon, we're going to see a much faster increase in the adoption of robotics. And the reasons are many, but one of them is we're seeing a lot of announcements about reshoring manufacturing to the US. And we all know that in order to do that, these are going to have to be highly automated facilities.
Okay, so I'm going to go directly to the big conversation around artificial intelligence. So how is AI, especially agentic, and all these different analytical variants that we're seeing, how are they enhancing robotic autonomy and predictive maintenance? S- talk about the challenges that remain in getting some of these applications into the real world industrial applications.
Well, the real world, of course, is different than the world of simulation or, just guessing what's going to happen. But we're making great progress. And if you look at AI today and you see that companies who are using robots in logistics and manufacturing are figuring out ways to take advantage of AI, and this is the worst it's ever going to be. And so sometimes you have to sit back and think, look at where we are now and how much better is it going to be in 5 years? How many applications are going to be enabled by AI. We think it's going to be a tremendous number. So we're pretty bullish on the impact of AI going forward.
Yeah, so speaking of, emerging applications and where AI is taking everything. So when we think around automotive, beyond automotive, which non-traditional sectors would you say, including agriculture, life sciences, humanoid deployments, which of these show the strongest automation adoption from your perspective?
Well, I think just about every industry is looking at how they can take advantage of robots and the intelligence of AI with them, and how you can use simulation to figure out what's going to happen in the real world. NVIDIA obviously is at the forefront of working with robotics companies to help them uh, do sim to real, real to sim, all that. And I think there's just so many opportunities, like I said, in every industry. I was at the Modex show recently, and so many companies are figuring out how to use AI-enabled robots in logistics and warehousing operations. You're going to see it at Automate in manufacturing, and you'll see other industries like retail, for instance, and restaurants. How do we use this intelligence to not only make the processes more efficient, but also fill in gaps of areas where you can't hire people to do some of these jobs that people don't want to do.
Yeah, no, indeed. And speaking of hiring people to do some of these jobs, it takes me directly to humanoid production. So I just came back from Hanover, of course, where everything was humanoid centric. So the focus was truly on humanoids. Everywhere I went, there was some kind of, if it's not the humanoid itself, it's some kind of a component that goes inside the humanoid. Production seems to be really ramping up. So, what production milestones or even cost reduction strategies does A3 track for humanoids in 2026?
So we're not officially tracking anything. We're not reporting on anything related to humanoids yet. A lot of people are. And the reason is it's a little early. I mean, there aren't very many humanoids in production right now in the United States. There may be pilots, and their Agility, I know, has some at GXO Logistics and maybe in some other companies. But it's too early to say where we are with humanoids. And it's even too early to say globally where we are with humanoids. Look, all this money is going in. We believe that eventually all this money is going to lead to progress in real world applications. But those applications haven't 100% been identified yet. And in which the customer doesn't care which form factor they use. They want a solution. So is it two-legged robots? Is it humanoid torso on a mobile base? Is it none of that? Um, we really don't know yet. Fixed in place humanoids versus ones that move around. We don't know what the most effective and reliable and cost efficient solution is, if any of those. But the money is still pouring in and we expect things to happen. Obviously, we have a huge emphasis on humanoids at Automate. We have an Automate humanoid robot forum for the first time, will be at Automate, and a humanoid robot pavilion with humanoid companies from all over the world exhibiting there. And that pavilion is sponsored by NVIDIA.
I also wanted to ask you about something that you've been a real thought leader at, and that is following your April 2026 congressional testimony on robots made in America. What policy priorities does A3 advocate to maintain US leadership amidst, what's going on geopolitically and with all the trade pressures that we are witnessing?
Well, we have a 6 point recommendation of a national strategy that we think the US should adopt. And this is what we've been talking about now for nearly 2 years, is that the countries that have been successful in establishing leadership in robotics have always had a national strategy. Japan did it back in the 70s and 80s. That launched them into the leadership position globally in robotics. China came along. They had a national strategy that they're still working very hard, and they established leadership. They dwarf the rest of the world in adoption of robotics. So what we need to do is start with the national strategy, which would include having a central government robotics office that could coordinate all these efforts that we think are needed. We need to somehow incentivize more robot adoption in the United States. This is what really drove China's ability to gain the lead in robotics is they were adopting robots. Companies were moving to China to set up manufacturing there. They were learning through the application of robots how to iterate on the next generation of the technology. They became the leaders not only in adoption, but also in production of robots. Just even to suit their own domestic base makes them the leaders in robots production. So that's essential. We recommend to the government that they look at their own operations and become a leading adopter, and not just in military areas, but also in areas like logistics. There's a lot that the government does where robots could play a role. And if the government did it, it would show leadership and it might encourage small and medium-sized companies throughout the US to do that. And get away from this fear that somehow robots are job killers, when the reality is robots are helping save and create jobs and filling gaps of jobs that people don't want to do. But the people issue is critical as well. We don't have enough skilled workers. We look at just manufacturing, we have a shortage of nearly 500,000 workers right now, with projections to be that by 2033, there'll be a shortage of up to 1.9 million manufacturing workers. Who's going to do that work? How are we going to reshore manufacturing? The other thing we need to do is look at continually investing in innovative technologies, not only at the research level at universities, but also looking at corporate innovation and seeing how we can stimulate that. And finally, there's a real need for standards, particularly in areas like humanoids. We think the US government can help drive some of that standardization, um, saying, look, this is what we need. You standards groups need to come together and make this happen more quickly. These technologies are changing very rapidly. It often takes 3 years or more to develop a consensus standard. We need to make that faster.
Yeah, check on the whole perspective. So Automate 2026. I from past years, my past experience, there's also a focus on a lot of developing the next generation of skills. What can I expect this year from the work that you do towards benefiting the next generation of the workforce?
Yeah, we've got, student competitions. We've got people coming from all over the world to participate in these. We open up the show to student groups. We put a heavy emphasis on education and the next generation of our workforce. These kids need to learn about robotics. They're all excited when they go to these competitions, whether it's FIRST Robotics or VEX. We need to get them into the robotics industry. So having them at Automate and participating in competitions and walking the show, this also helps them make connections to the companies that are the leaders in the space who are, looking for people. Everybody's looking for people right now in this space. And so this is a great way to connect them to potential jobs, either today or in the future.
Yeah, what else can I look forward to when I go to Automate this year? What are some of the key focal points that editors, as well as the public attendees, I should say, should really look forward to?
Well, I mean, we talk a lot about humanoids, obviously, and robotics in general. But remember, AI is a big component of Automate, machine vision and imaging, really critical enabling technologies for robots, but also on their own, doing things unrelated to robots. Motion control, who's making the motors and the actuators for these technologies? All of that's at Automate as well. So you're really seeing the whole ecosystem too. You're seeing leading system integrators. Now, that's the primary interface with customers. How do I make all this stuff work? I see all these cool technologies, but how do I employ them in my factory? We've got a whole bunch of integrators there showing really impressive solutions. And again, this global perspective that Automate offers, it's not just seeing what's going on in the US, but you're seeing things going on all over the world when you come to Automate.
Yeah. My last question to you, and I think this is more of a tip of the hat to the winners of the Engelberger Award of 2026. I think that the choice this year has a special resonance, obviously, to robotics capability and to reliability, to scalability. Tell me a little bit about how you came to choose the winners this year. Talk about them.
So I'll tell you about the process first. People are nominated for an Engelberger Award. We consider it the Nobel Prize of Robotics. There's been less than 150 winners of the Engelberger Award since it was first introduced, I believe, in 1977. So it's very prestigious. The nominations come in. Once a person is nominated, they're considered for life. So you could have been nominated 30 years ago and ultimately be awarded an Engelberger Award because we look at people every year and there's always new nominees coming in. Um, so this year's winners are really great. In leadership, Hiroshi Fujiwara from Japan, he's been involved in robotics an awfully long time. He worked for the Ministry of Industry and Trade in Japan. They were one of the real drivers of Japan becoming a world leader. I think he's also been with Jetro. He's been running the Japanese Robot Association for many years. This is a global industry. Japan's one of the leading players. He's one of the leading people, and he richly deserves that award. On the Applications Award, so we present two awards each year, leadership every year, and then the other award rotates between application, um, technology development, and research. And so this year it's in application. And the application Engelberger Award winner is Bob Little, who was one of the founders of ATI, which was ultimately acquired by Novanta. He's been in this industry more than 4 decades. The work they did at ATI and tool changers really enabled so many applications for robotics. He's one of the most passionate supporters of our industry that we've ever had. And so I'm thrilled that he'll be winning the award this year.
Well, congratulations to those winners and congratulations to you and your success so far. Jeff, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to connect with you ahead of the show, and I look forward to seeing you there this year.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you there as well.